Where I came back. Belonged to one church in Phoenix, one church in Tucson, and one church.
Oh boy, it's amazing.
That's enough. Who's singing? It must be Spencer.
Yeah.
All right, y'all basses, we need you to kick in tonight. Basses.
I don't sing very loud.
I once was lost in sin, but Jesus took me in, and then the light from heaven filled my soul. He laid my heart in love, and wrote my name above, and just a little talk with Jesus made me whole.
Now let us
Have a little talk with Jesus, let us tell him about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. When you feel the prayerful yearning at your heart to heaven is turning, you will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right, makes it right. Sometimes my passing through will have a ray of cheer, and then out of may hide the light of day. The mist of sin may rise and hide the starry skies, but just a talk with Jesus clears the way. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. You feel a little prayerful yearning at your heart to heaven is turning. You will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right, makes it right. I lay out doubts and fears, my eyes be filled with tears, but Jesus is a friend who watches day and night. I go to him in prayer, he knows my every care, and just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus, let us tell him about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. You feel a little prayerful yearning at your heart to heaven is turning. You will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right, makes it right. It's always exhausting. Slow it down a little bit. I am the sheep and the Lord is my shepherd, watching over my soul to keep guarding over me ever, watching wherever I go. And when the winds blow, he is my shelter, and when I'm lost and alone, he rescues me. And when the lion comes, he is my victory, constantly watching over me. He is constantly watching over me. We are his children, and he is our Father, watching over our soul. Great is his love for his sons and his daughters, watching wherever we go. And when the winds blow, he is my shelter, and when I'm lost and alone, he rescues me. And when the lion comes, he is my victory, constantly watching over me. He is constantly watching over me. And when the wind blows, he is my shelter, and I'm lost and alone, he rescues me. And when the lion comes, he is my victory, constantly watching over me. He is constantly watching over me. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Know the Lord liveth, and bless me, the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I know the Lord liveth, and bless me, the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Know the Lord liveth, and bless me, the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. Know the Lord liveth, and bless me, the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I will call upon the Lord. All right. I've got two things that I wanted to announce before we get started. The first is Maxine would like some help resetting the tables after our meeting, so some of you guys can do that. She would appreciate it. And second, today is a big day. It's a day of a milestone. Matthew received his 1-year sobriety chip. So that. You pass that around, let everybody take a look at that. And so that's a great thing.
Yeah. Must have a great sponsor. I'll tell you all that.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Great.
All right, we're in Mark 15, and while you're turning there, just congratulations, Matthew. I was telling you when we get to these points in our lives and we get acknowledged for an achievement, you know, we can look at it like, hey, look what I did, or I see it as a confirmation of the commitment that was made. So a year ago, Matthew made a commitment, and he is keeping that commitment. So that's an example to all of us.
Yeah.
It's an example of the work of God in a person's life. Though oftentimes people don't recognize it, but God has always been active in history. His plan of redemption has unfolded in the events of history. And there are a lot of examples in the Bible about God using history to accomplish His will. And I want to look at just one example. And the example is the invasion and the ultimate exile of the nation of Judah, having been invaded by the empire of Babylon. So this first passage talks about King Zedekiah. It says, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Jehoiakim had done. Because of the Lord's anger, it came to the point in Jerusalem and Judea that he finally banished them from his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. In the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon advanced against Jerusalem with his entire army. They laid siege to the city and built a siege wall all around it. And when you read the rest of that passage, it talks about how Babylon conquered Judah. So, why did Babylon conquer Judah?
Because of their sinning, ignoring God.
Right. But what was it from the king of Babylon's perspective?
It was just territory for him.
It was territory for him. Zedekiah rebelled against the king, and so the king invaded Judah. So you could have been watching this on a video reel. YouTube video. And you're just watching the events of history play out. Israel is an unstable country. Judah is an unstable country. They're supposed to be a vassal state for Babylon. That means pay a tribute, do what Babylon says. But it says Zedekiah rebelled, and so the king of Babylon came in and laid waste to their land. But this next passage tells us what was really going on. 2 Chronicles 36, 15 through 17 it should be. It says, "But the Lord, the God of their ancestors, sent word against them by the hand of his messengers, sending them time and time again. For he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept ridiculing God's messengers, despising his words, scoffing at his prophets, until the Lord's wrath was so stirred up against his people that there was no remedy. So he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans," which is the Babylonians, "who killed their fit young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary. He had no pity on young men or young women, elderly or aged. He handed them all over to him." So, what does this passage tell us differently? Yes?
God.
God did it. God was active in this act of wrath. So from one perspective, it was the king of Babylon, but from the other perspective, it was really the God of heaven. And God has always done this. He has always used the events of history to unfold his plan of redemption. Depends on how we're looking at it. Depends on our perspective whether or not we see it. And that's true about every aspect of our lives. So when we get to Mark 15, that's part of what's going on here. We can look at this passage and we can try and figure out what Pilate was doing, what the Jewish leaders were doing. Who's responsible? Why did this take place? And really, the answer is it was the will of God. It wasn't Pilate, it wasn't the Jews. It was God's plan of redemption unfolding in history. So chapter 15, book of Mark, verse 1, "As soon as it was morning, having held a meeting with the elders, scribes, and the whole Sanhedrin, the chief priests tied up Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate." Last week we looked at the arrest of Jesus by the Jewish leaders, and they had a trial of sorts.
but they really couldn't do it officially at night. They had to wait till this morning that's being discussed here for them to hand down their decision and then take him to Pilate. They deemed he should die because of his blasphemy against what they thought was sacred. So Jesus is taken and handed over to Pilate. Verse 2. So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." So what do you think about that answer that Jesus gives him?
Mine says, that's truth.
Okay, all right. Okay. It's,
Mine says, yes, it is as you say.
it is as you say.
That's what I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So he doesn't give necessarily a direct answer. And, but he is telling, it's an indirect answer, but it is an answer that reflects the truth. That Jesus understands that he is the king of the Jews, but it's not like what Pilate thinks. And the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate questioned him again. "Aren't you going to answer? Look how many things they are accusing you of." But Jesus still did not answer, so Pilate was amazed. Yeah. He's perplexed. And so that's our first point this evening is Pilate is perplexed by Jesus' actions. Luke 23 gives us a little bit more information about the accusations that they're making. Mark doesn't give us the details, but Luke does, 23, 1 through 5. Then their whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is a Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so," or "That is true." Pilate then told the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no grounds for charging this man." But they kept insisting, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee, where he started, even to here." When Pilate heard this, he asked if the man was a Galilean. Finding that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod. So we won't go any more into that. So Pilate is perplexed because Jesus does not specifically answer the charges. But Pilate really doesn't care about Jesus. And he only cares about the situation because it's beginning to create a riot. It's going to get out of hand before this part of the story is over. And so Pilate doesn't think that Jesus is guilty, but he's not ready to give in to the Jews. So 3 times in this section, he refers to, in the book of Mark, he refers to Jesus as King of the Jews. So verse 2, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And then as we read on, at the festival, Pilate used to release for the people a prisoner whom they requested. There was one named Barabbas, who was in prison with rebels who had committed murder during the rebellion. The crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do for them as was his custom. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews for you?" So he's starting to needle them a little bit. He's starting to poke at them. He's poking the bear here because they don't think he is the king of the Jews. Pilate is using the phrase to describe Jesus. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews to you?" For he knew that it was because of envy the chief priests had handed him over. So he can see there's something going on here. They have an agenda, and they're not being honest, they're not being forthright, and so he just irritates them using this phrase. Verse 11, but the chief priest stirred up the crowd so that he would release Barabbas to them instead. Pilate asked them, "Then what do you want me to do with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Yeah. So he just keeps going. He just keeps irritating them. He keeps digging deeper because he doesn't care about them, and he doesn't even care about Jesus. He just wants to move past this. Again, they shouted, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What has he done wrong?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So now they're starting to get out of hand. You know, they're starting to get loud. They're starting to get out of control. Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them, and after having Jesus flogged, he handed him over to be crucified. Some of the other gospel accounts seem to suggest that Pilate is struggling with this. And almost, some people have interpreted that as maybe Pilate had a good side to him here. He knew Jesus was innocent. He knew the Jews had an agenda. And so he wants to let him, he really wants to let him loose.
But Dennis,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't Pilate's wife say you need to let him go because I had a dream and
Yeah.
you really need to be letting him go?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's that. There's that aspect of it. So he's getting information from another side, but he doesn't care. As a matter of fact, the only thing he probably cares about is the fact that this crowd is getting out of control. And so he gives in to the crowd.
Dennis,
Yes, yes.
I was gonna say, like, I think, according to the Roman law, I think Jesus not talking wasn't helping Pilate help Jesus.
Yeah,
Very much.
That was to fulfill prophecy as well.
yeah. Yeah. Pilate was perplexed. That's why he was perplexed, because he could have just said, "I release Jesus." But Jesus would not defend himself.
I think one of the things that people don't realize is that when it comes to the Roman rulers, it's all about keep these people peaceable and keep the taxpayer money coming back to the emperor or
Yeah.
to the Caesar.
Yeah.
That was really what it was all about. And so if there was an insurrection or something like that, that was the quickest way to lose your head as a ruler in the Roman world, is to get foisted by letting the people rise up against you. And so, I think there was also a disdain for the Jews in regard to him. I get that from the picture you're painting there and some other statements that he'd made.
Yeah.
So I know his wife had said something about that, but I also feel like he had an arrogance about him and a disdain for the Jewish people, and so really I don't think that made much of an impact on him. Whether he, would believe it or not, he was still gonna go ahead and just do what he wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. He was going to do what he had to do to keep the peace. And there's some commentary that suggests that people in his position, he was a prefect in Judea, they hated it. They just hated it because the Jews were difficult, they were weird, and they would fight to get their point across. So, to the Romans, none of it made any sense. Why not just add one more God? Or, why be worried about this? So that they didn't understand the Jews, and they hated being assigned to that. So Pilate was no hero. He did what he had to do, but he was actually doing God's will. As was Jesus. So this is the second point that comes out of this section, is that Jesus is following the plan that he helped create. And to me, that gets my attention. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly what Pilate's doing. He knows exactly what the Jewish leaders are doing. And he doesn't resist it because he helped write the script. Now, I want to look at two passages in Isaiah. Isaiah 42. So I want to get somebody to volunteer to read this. Isaiah 42, 1 through 9. Who will volunteer to read it? Okay, Alex, give us a minute to get there. Isaiah 42, 1 through 9. And as you listen to it being read, where do you see Jesus in these words? Does that question make sense? Where do you see Jesus? Go ahead.
Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be discouraged, till he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his law. Thus says God, the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it, and spirit to those who walk in it. I, the Lord, I have called you in righteousness. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name, my glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols. Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them.
Okay. So, where do you see Jesus in this section?
Yeah.
Oh, does someone say off of it? Yeah. Anything specific?
Verse 5,
Okay,
say to God, Lord, who created the heavens, stretched them out. You know that from John, it says that he was the creative force and bringing forth everything we know.
okay,
Well, in verse 2, it says, "He will not cry out aloud or lift up his voice," and he didn't.
yeah,
The whole time he was being accused, he was silent, and he just affirmed what was told to him or asked to him. He did not speak out.
Verse 1, the chosen one,
yeah,
and my spirit is on him. Remember the dove that came down?
yeah,
He will bring justice to nations, and that's in Isaiah 2
yeah,
also, I mean.
yeah. Not Isaiah 2. Yeah. What else?
His bruised reed, he will not put out a smoldering wick. Verse 3,
Yeah,
remember? That's in Isaiah 2 also, I think.
well, this is Isaiah.
Well, I know, but I, bruised, but not in another area.
Yeah. Verse 3 always speaks to my heart because it shows the compassion that he will have on wounded people is how I interpret this. He will not break a bruised reed. He will not put out a smoldering wick. He tries to support people. He has compassion for people who would otherwise be considered weak. I will appoint you to be a covenant for the people, a light to the nations, open blind eyes, about his miracles. And that last statement in verse 9, I announce these things to you before they occur. Yes. Yes.
No, I was just gonna say what you just said.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, in a sense, Jesus wrote this. And this is part of his script for his ministry. And he has faithfully followed it. And that's what he's doing in Mark 15. Now, one more passage, it's a little bit longer. Isaiah 52, beginning in verse 13.
I can read it.
Okay, so all the way through the end of 53. So this is all one section, again, describing the suffering servant, describing someone who will be serving God in this way. So begin in verse 13. Go ahead. Chapter 52.
See, my servant will act wisely. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted. Just as there were many who were appalled at him, his appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any human being, and his form marred beyond human likeness. So he will sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. For what they were not told, they will see, and what they have not heard, they will understand. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shears is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished. He was assigned a grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him, and to cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong. Because he poured out his life unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors, for he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
Okay, thanks. That's a long section. But again, what do we see? Where do we see Jesus in this section?
Where don't you?
Yeah.
Just verses 1 through.
Okay.
Definitely verse 5.
Yeah.
He was crushed for our iniquities.
Yeah.
But the brothers of Jesus was upon him.
And the very thing that's going on now, the thing that is perplexing Pilate is the fact that he, verses 7 and 8, or verse 7, he was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep is silent before her shears, he did not open his mouth.
One thing that kind of strikes me as unusual is verse 9. His grave was assigned with wicked men, and yet he was with a rich man in his death. That's such an amazing fulfillment of prophecy. People would say, well, that Jesus just fulfilled, what was going on, and according to the scriptures he knew, but there ain't no way that happens. Not when you have scriptures like this that point out details that are so distinct to say that, yeah, he's going to die a wicked man's death, but he's going to die and then be buried in a rich man's tomb.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, the detail is astounding. Of course, Pilate doesn't understand this, so he's going to do what he has to do, but in doing what he has to do, he's fulfilling the plan of redemption as it unfolds in history.
I know that it talks about how he wasn't, he didn't have a desirable form. But it's pretty intense when they say he was disfigured and didn't even look like a man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they beat him pretty bad.
What was that?
I said they beat him pretty bad,
So that came from his beating, you're saying?
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that first reference, yeah.
Well,
I
that's
think
good,
it's-
because I didn't understand it
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, I think that, this description is so detailed. And Jesus was following the plan that he helped create. Yes, sir?
Dennis, it's kind of comforting to me, at least, that you don't have to be handsome and have Hollywood hair to be a good teacher.
Yes. Okay. Appreciate that. Yes, sir?
I'm talking about me.
No, but I appreciate that because I'm about ready to cry here, so you kind of took return the emotion, and that's why I appreciate that. I am, amen, by the way. Go, Josh.
My personal take on him not being recognizable as a man is, that's the way it's described, is he's unrecognizable as a man.
Yeah.
I don't care how hard you beat someone, you're gonna be able to tell that they're a man. I personally think that it's because he was taking the weight of the sin of the world. When you see someone that lives actively in sin, you're like, man, what, you're 40? You look like you're 75. Because just one person's sin deteriorated their body beyond its years. And for him to take on the sins of the world in that moment would make him unrecognizable. It was more than just a physical beating, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I see your point. I've seen a graphic of this, and so it is, you know, the result from the beating is the direct result of sin. And so I guess I see both of those ideas could be consistent, because, you know, they beat him in their sinful mocking, and it was part of the scourge of, by his wounds we are healed. So it's part of all of that. So I guess I see both ideas could be a part of his disfiguring. But this was a plan that was laid out. We read in several places, just want to look at two, Revelation 13:8 and 1 Peter 18:21. 1 Peter 1:18-21. It says, "For you know that you were redeemed from your empty way of life inherited from your fathers." That's another study. Inherited from your fathers, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of an unblemished and spotless lamb. He was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but revealed in these last times for you. So the knowledge of Christ was, you know, goes to a time before the foundation of the world. And then Revelation chapter 13 and verse 8 perhaps brings it a little bit clearer.
I'm already there, if you want me to read it.
Go ahead.
And all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. They are the ones whose names were not written in the book of life, which belongs to the Lamb who was killed before the world was made.
Yeah. So this which is playing out, we're thinking it's the decision of Pilate or the decision of the Jewish leaders. It's the decision of the one who created the plan. It is God himself who is fulfilling this plan in the life of Christ. Maybe one more real quick, John 1:1, which speaks about, again, the pre-existence of Jesus. the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. And if we wonder, well, the Word, who, what is that referring to? Verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We observed his glory, the glory as the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. So Jesus is before the foundation of the earth, before what we understand as the human story. Jesus was, and this is his plan. Redemption for our rebellion was his plan, and he is fulfilling that plan in the events of history. Again, it's not the decision of Pilate. It's not the decision of the Jews. It is Jesus just following the plan. And I don't know if my words, this next bullet point, if this accurately captures. So Jesus is operating in a completely different sphere as he interacts with people. He knows what he's all about. He knows where he's going. He's written a script. As he lives his life, the plan of redemption is unfolding. He is teaching the people the truth. He is helping them understand that he is the fulfillment of the law. He is what the law was pointing to. And he knows this because he wrote the plan. It's his plan that's unfolding in history. He knew what we would do. And so in this plan isn't a, oops, let's go to plan B. This is the plan of human history. And so because Jesus knows who he is, he knows the plan. He wrote the plan. He is operating then from a place of authority. And that's what people notice about him. And that, in my mind, is the source of the envy that Pilate notices in the Jewish leadership. Envy is at the core. It is so much at the core of human struggle. Envy, the desire that we have. I think there's a definition of envy. It's a feeling of discontent and resentment aroused, and in conjunction with desire for the possessions or qualities of another. And we struggle with envy. We struggle with jealousy. It is at the core oftentimes of some of the chaos in the relationships that we have. We want what someone else has. And in this case, the Jewish leaders always wanted what Jesus has. In Mark 1:21, so this is some of the ground that we have already covered. Mark 1:21, 21 through 28. They went into Capernaum, and right away he entered the synagogue on the Sabbath and began to teach. They were astonished at his teaching because he was teaching them as one who had authority, not like the scribes. So what does that mean? As one who had authority. That means he is, bless you.
Thank you.
That means he is operating from a sphere of confidence and knowledge. He knows what it's all about. And so as he teaches, he's not quoting anybody. Oftentimes, as you know I teach sometimes to make a point, I'll quote somebody. So I'm appealing to their authority as a statement to give evidence to what I'm saying. Don't we do that? You know, we'll quote somebody else, and that's the authority that on which we're building our idea or our argument. But Jesus didn't need that. He is self-contained because he knows who he is and he knows what his life is all about. He's operating from a place of authority, and it's genuine. It's not something that's forced, and people notice it. It stands out to people that there's something different about him. He's not like the scribes of their time. He is speaking with an authority that comes from the fact that he is who he says he is. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's not forced. I think it's because a lot of times, like later in John, it's strictly like his connection with the Father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he surrendered so much, he got to will.
Yeah. It's his connection with God, and that is his authority. He is, and he is operating within the realm of the plan. He says, I'm only doing what the Father told me to do. I read something today, and it's just to maybe carry on that idea. I'm only doing what the Father told me to do, and we've already talked about this. It's the plan that was enacted from the foundation of this world. So from the very beginning, and that's what Jesus is all about, and that authenticity is what shines through. That authenticity is what people pick up on. But if you think you're the authority, then you're going to get angry. And that's the point in Mark 11, where Jesus is doing some things that's raising the tension of the Jewish leaders. Mark 11, he comes into Jerusalem, he rides on the donkey, and he's doing things that kings do. And then as far as they're concerned, verse 15 of chapter 11, he cleanses the temple, and this really makes them angry. And so, verse 27, when they came again to Jerusalem, he was walking in the temple. This is 11:27. As he was walking in the temple, the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders came and asked him, by what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority to do these things? And what they're saying is that you didn't clear this through us. You didn't ask us. You didn't talk to us about what is the protocol for operations in the temple. And this is a problem to them, is because they thought they were the authority. But the people said, Jesus teaches as one who has authority, not like the scribes and the Pharisees. They're not speaking from authority. They're not genuine. They're not authentic. And people can see it. Jesus didn't go through them. And so the genuine love and enthusiastic response that they always wanted was enjoyed by Jesus. And they were full of envy. What they expected to receive, Jesus did. And it's startling to think that from the perspective of the Jewish leaders, that's their why. Why are you killing Jesus? Because we're envious of him. He has what we deserve. He has what we should have. But they don't have it because they're playing a game. They're playing a religious game. I don't think they even believed what they were doing. People can be like that. So, that's why the Jews had to kill him. Because he was a threat to their authority. And that's it. That's it. There is no other reason. Pilate had to kill him because he was starting to cause a riot. And Pilate needed to shut it down. Jesus knew that he had to give his life because it was determined from the beginning. So Jesus had to die. Part of the plan he and the Father initiated before the foundation of the earth. And what we see unfolding in history in the words of Mark 15 is just what Jesus planned. Just what Jesus planned for us. For us. Gordon, could you lead us in prayer?
Let's pray. Father, for the blessings of the day, we thank you, acknowledge you as the giver of every good gift, and that all good things come down from you. Father, we thank you for the time together, the blessings of study and thought and meditation and prayer. We pray now, Father, for a night of peaceful rest, and we pray that we'll be refreshed tomorrow and find some place to do good in your word. In
Amen.
Jesus' name.
It's gotta be inside. See.
Great, Matthew.